Rogue is one where I honestly don't really know where to begin with. For me personally, I have to say this is probably the most disappointing story of the season thus far, and that's really, really disappointing in itself, because this is the first story to not be written or co-written by a current or former showrunner since the end of Series 12. We finally got a new interpretation of the Doctor that's not something we've seen before, yet it felt the exact same, and that nothing had particularly changed. Why don't we just talk about the good and the bad? Beginning with the good, I have to say the standout of this is the Bridgerton setting, and if you didn't know that it was a Bridgerton setting, I don't know what episode you were watching, because they constantly have to remind you, oh my Bridgerton, this is so Bridgerton, etc, etc. That aspect did end up feeling a bit taxing, but it doesn't detract from the actual setting itself. Such a setting does of course allow for some fantastic costume design, and especially when it comes to the Doctor, a nice harkening back to the Pertwee era outfit. It also allows for something that Bridgerton itself has pioneered, which is using modern songs and putting them into a classical context. Bridgerton has done this with all sorts of songs, but the one that's used there and is later used here is, of course, Billie Eilish's Bad Guy. I haven't seen many people mention this or particularly notice it, but it's a nice detail even if it flew under the radar for most people. Another huge positive of this episode had to be its namesake, being the character of Rogue. Now, we never do actually find out his real name, where he comes from, or really who he is apart from being a bounty hunter that, like Kylie Minogue, but what we do find out is a character that has some real untapped potential here that I hope is explored in a later series. Whether the Doctor actually follows through and does end up looking for Rogue is to be seen, but I for one would certainly be receptive to it being in the next series, even if it was just a minor plot thread. A major one would be fantastic, but I feel like this is something that would be quite small scale. Though I have to say, you cannot convince me that he is just not Jack in any way but with the name. You look at this character, they're wearing a blue long coat, similar to an RAF coat. They are American in their accent, they've got blackish hair, similar features, a strange time-travelling backstory where they're from the future, a bounty hunter of sorts. Of course, Jack was a time agent, not a bounty hunter, but it was kinda similar after they left the agency. But they are essentially the same character. The major differences being, 1, the name, and 2, that to kiss the Doctor, Jack had to wait half a series, whereas Rogue had to wait 40 minutes, maybe if we're going in universe, an hour of knowing the Doctor. Not long at all. I'd love to see what John Barrowman would have to say about this, because you already know he's going to be shouting and screaming that they've completely replaced him, and they know that his performance and character was so good that they had to bring it back, even if they couldn't have him. Yeah, just fuel his ego, pretty much. The final outlying positive that immediately sticks in my head is something that, when I saw it, made me have to pause and then skip right back to the beginning just to see exactly what happened, and that's the introduction of Richard E. Grant, or should I say the reintroduction of the Shalka Doctor. Now, I have seen a lot of debate on Twitter over whether this is meant to be the Shalka Doctor, Richard E. Grant, or it's meant to be the Valeyard, Michael Jaston. I can see a case for both of them. The face, when I saw it, I first assumed, oh, it's just a strange, older version of the Seventh Doctor and they've used a weird photo. But no, it's not Sylvester McCoy. It does look half and half like Michael Jaston and Richard E. Grant, but if you're going to include the Valeyard, why wouldn't you include the Dream Lord? Neither of them are actually the Doctor in name, whereas the Shalka Doctor at least is. But it does open a whole can of worms in terms of canonicity, and this is going to be a whole side tangent, so if you want to skip ahead, that's completely fine. But the Scream of the Shalka is the only thing that the BBC has ever completely decanonised and said this is not true. This was, of course, to make it easier for people to understand that this is not material that you need to know before the Ninth Doctor comes out on TV. It's not connected in any way. This is not the Ninth Doctor. Christopher Eccleston is the Ninth Doctor. Just to basically not create confusion. So this is opening up a lot of stuff in terms of what else can be brought properly into the show. We've already had some stuff from the comics, like Absalom Dax image and some Big Finish things in the Night of the Doctor, but nothing too massive, so perhaps Russell is open to putting more out-of-universe elements into the TV show, and I would absolutely be so on board with this. It would be amazing to finally expand out into these basically untapped materials that half the audience doesn't even know exists. Anyway, tangent over. But it was really nice to see what I am assuming is the Shalka Doctor make some kind of appearance. Never been recognised in the last 21 years in any capacity whatsoever. It makes sense, but we'll see what happens from here. Let's talk about the bad, and I have to start by saying I was halfway through this episode and felt like literally nothing happened. I checked the time at about 20 minutes in and realised, holy crap, I'm 20 minutes in and the plot feels like it hasn't even developed yet. This is going to be another story where everything is just wrapped up really quickly in the last 15 minutes. Except it was worse than that, because everything started in the last 20 to 15 minutes. The villains themselves, being the Chulda, I didn't think were very good, and I also couldn't take them very seriously. I mean, shouting, "We're gonna cosplay this planet to death," is just ridiculous. I get that you're not really meant to take them that serious, but it also means that they're not very threatening. It's absolutely ridiculous. Their costumes also looked, to me at least, incredibly cheap and ridiculous. One of them looked like Gonzo from the Muppets. It was so strange. The only one where I think it was pretty much on point was the one played by Indira Varma, who, if you didn't know, played Susie in Torchwood, who was a kind of secondary main character. A fake-out member of the main cast, so to speak. It's certainly nice to have her back. She's a great actress. But I think her skills in this series could have been used way better elsewhere. She's definitely carrying the story on the villain's front. Towards the end, I also noticed a lot of tell not show, particularly when Rogue was talking to the Doctor about getting Ruby out of there and sacrificing her to save essentially the entire Earth. Yeah, I mean, we know this. It's obvious. You can infer it from the context of the scene. You don't have to scream it at me. At the end of the day, it's a small thing. I was not a huge fan of this story, and I really had some big expectations for it, so leaving underwhelmed was quite a disappointment, as I said in the beginning. But next week's The Legend of Ruby Sunday, that looks particularly interesting. Now, if you haven't seen the Next Time trailer because you skip all that kind of thing, then you won't know this, but there is, of course, the full reveal of Susan Twist. She keeps appearing all over every single adventure. Why? The Doctor and Ruby are finally going to find out why, and it's Susan herself that remembers all of these, or at least this incarnation of Susan will, this one central one to the story, remembers all of these, but doesn't know why they remember them, or how any of this has happened. One of them looks like a cross between Darth Maul and Pinhead and has some pyramids in the background. People are saying, well, this is the Sutekh allegory, this is where Sutekh comes in. Yeah, I don't buy that. I don't buy it in the slightest that Sutekh is going to show up. It's not something that I want to happen, and nor do I think it will. But we'll see. We've got a whole week to wait for this, and interestingly, this story is going to be rebroadcast as the double bill in the cinema, if you're going to see that, where the final two stories, which is Legend of Ruby Sunday, and the last one, which I don't remember the name to, and I'm not going to quickly remind myself, on the 21st of June. I'll be there, I'll be watching it in my local cinema, and I will be releasing a reaction the next day after, as per usual. But I will be talking more about both of them. Maybe we'll revise over our thoughts on Legend of Ruby Sunday. We'll see what happens when we get there. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe down below, as it really helps out the channel. But, as always, thanks for watching.